PBE is a place-based education which is hands-on, project-based, and always related to something in the real world.
Throughout this video, we feel there are 5 necessary vocabulary words that you should know. Refractometer, an instrument for determining the salinity in a solution.
Tidal zone, an area subject to a tidal action.
Anonymous key, a resource that uses clues about a species to find information.
Vegetation, different types of plant species.
Volume, the amount of space an object takes up, length times width times height. At Maudsley, we identified trees and sketched a certain area of land. We used a dichotomous key to identify the tree species, and we also learned how to use a dichotomous key.
Impact your learning.
I thought this was like a good. I thought it was good get out of your seats and stuff. But I also thought it was like a good interactive learning. I thought it was good to see what you're learning about.
What did you learn on this trip?
Oh, we learned about the different types of trees and the scientific names and stuff, as well as the variety of trees.
Okay. Did you enjoy this trip?
At Sandy Point, we went into the different tidal zones and looked at the different species of living things living there. Then we identified bird species, talked about the sand dunes, and learned about different types of beach vegetation. We learned how to classify different types of organisms in the tidal zones.
What that you learned about on this field trip?
Probably the golden rods.
What was your favorite part of this field trip?
Going tide pooling and seeing all the different animals.
What was one thing that you learned about on this field trip?
How the tide pools help and all the animals that live in there and how they work as a community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How did we measure the salinity?
We got water samples from different sections of Joppa, and we used a refractometer to see the amount of salt.
How did you measure the volume of the fish?
We got a graduated cylinder and filled it to a certain amount of water, and then added in the number of fish and saw how much it was.
Did you enjoy this field trip?
It was pretty fun, but it was a little bit messy and dirty. So.
On the kayak trip, we were supposed to identify plants in the marsh, but because we had to go against the wind, we did not get our task done. That shows one of the struggles of PBE.
Did you enjoy this field trip?
Yes.
Why?
It was my first experience kayaking and I enjoyed it, especially with my classmates, and it was a good experience.
What was one thing that you learned?
About kayaking? That you always have to keep your balance and be alert.
Did you find this trip challenging?
Somewhat challenging because since you always had to be alert, if you just didn't always paddle the right way, you could tip over, so it was kind of challenging.
Okay. Thank you. Overall, Newburyport is an ideal place for PBE because we have all different types of land, from beaches to state parks and beyond. Trips impact the students' learning.
Place-based education changes the way that the teacher delivers a unit of study. So instead of just taking a student and opening their head like this and lifting it up and pouring information in and then closing it and asking them to spit it back out at me, I just work more as a guide, and I just take them to the places where they can learn important concepts related to science and conservation. And when they're in those places, they get the opportunity to meet experts, and the experts in the community guide them through it and share their knowledge with them. So it's more of an organic way to learn. I'm just more like a guide, and you guys learn from the place rather than me translating and sticking it in your head. So that's what I really like about place-based education. And Newburyport is a phenomenal place to do that if you're a science teacher, because of our local environment. The fact that we have the ocean meeting the river and the land all coming together in a dynamic number of ecosystems.
Which trip do you think the students learn the most on?
Which one did you learn the most on?
I thought I learned the most on the Joppa one.
Why?
because we got to we measured the salinity and we went to we learned a lot of different things on that as opposed to just one thing. We learned
Great. So I would have to agree with you that the JAPA thing is when the students are acting most like real-life scientists. Their role there is to collect real data. And so they have to learn how to do that, how to record the data, use the instruments to measure it. And so in terms of pure science, that's probably the most educating one, right? But that's not to say that roaming around in a kayak isn't educating. You learn a lot there. You learn a lot about yourself, about your teammates, about your abilities, and also about the natural environments, because some of the places we go in kayaks we couldn't get to otherwise. I think your trip was kind of a mess, right?
Yeah.
All right. What'd you learn about that?
That you should probably check how the wind's gonna be when you go to kayak because we didn't really learn anything. We just kind of
Had to do what all day?
kayak all day.
Kayak all day and paddle against the wind. So it was less learning and more. The lesson was more like a tough lesson, how to be aware of your weather and the conditions around you. So there's always a lesson in there, no matter how well the trip goes. I think kayaking is really fun. It's a great physical part of the trip.
Thank you.